What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Refinement. Today's video, we're going to talk about the $600 threshold from the IRS. This is a new rule, although I don't think it's going to impact resellers that much, except for in a good way. So I'm going to go over that in this video. And also I'm going to go over the top 10 tax questions that I always get on my YouTube channel. So make sure you watch all the way to the end. Appreciate you guys. Let's get in the show. So I'm going to be doing this video with my friend Mark too. He is a licensed EA and a CPA, so he's an enrolled agent and an accountant. So I recommend that you take his tax course. If you use code Daily Refinement, you get $50 off all year round. But right now he's doing a promotion on January 18th. You'll get $100 off if you take the course. It's a really good deal. I recommend it for anybody doing reselling at any level, because after you kind of get the feel of things, it really just is about tax prep. So I recommend you take his course. Let's get in the show.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Refinement. I've invited Mark too, my CPA friend, to the show today to answer the most common tax questions I get. So I'm going to refer to this video when people ask me these questions, because I get them almost every single day. Plus, tax season's about to get crazy. So I want to ask you these questions. And we do have a live audience. So anyone that has questions, throw in the chat and we'll try to get to it. But the number one question recently has been, what is this $600 threshold anyway?
The $600 threshold. It is a little bit confusing because we tend to think of, well, I mean, if you employ contractors, then a lot of people know that they're supposed to send 1099s if they pay their contractors over $600 total during the year. But this is different. So this is has to do with the 1099K forms that you might have received in prior years if you've ever sold over $20,000 through any given platform or payment processor. Mm-hmm. So if you had sales through eBay, let's say, of over $20,000 and at least 200 transactions, eBay or PayPal or whoever the payment processor was required to send you a form 1099K is what it's called. And that means that the IRS gets a copy as well. But for 2022, that threshold was reduced from 20,000 down to 600. Yep. So that's a pretty big reduction. I mean, it's basically saying if you have any sales at all, you're going to get a 1099 and the government's going to know about it.
Yep. So my friend actually just texted me and asked me if I wanted to buy a $1,000 lottery win for $500. And because now in California, you have to fill out a 1099K for any winnings over $599. So it even applies to the lottery. So I thought it was really interesting, because you can't just go to the gas station and collect your $1,000. You have to fill out a form and then they mail you a check. And I thought this was so funny because it's everywhere now. And so I think it's important to understand that people just need to learn how to report their taxes properly, because there's so many ways to make money online. And I think it's just one transaction now. There's no transaction limit.
Right. Yep. There's no threshold for transactions. It used to be 200. Now it's anything.
Anything.
And,
cool.
And it doesn't matter so much if you were already reporting your income no matter what. But a lot of people didn't know that, eBay income or online income is even taxable at all.
Right.
Because they weren't getting a form for it. So they're like, oh, I don't have to report it. And some people still don't think that. So I posted a YouTube video about this.
I saw that.
And it's getting a lot more views than I've ever gotten on YouTube before. And in a lot of the comments,
I would consider that going viral, to be honest. That video has a lot of views.
Well, yeah, for when I got 10,000 views, I was like, wow, for me, this is going viral. And then it did it's done quite a few more than that now. So, but yeah, the comments are some people are like, oh, thanks, that's so helpful. And there's a lot of lively.
I'm gonna link that video in the chat, because people, or in the description, because the comments are wild. I didn't know people had that kind of opinion on how the tax system works in the US. And that person that says, show me where it says we have to pay taxes at all. That is the best comment maybe ever. It's so funny.
I've gotten that several times now.
So that's pretty funny. But that leads me to the second question, which is, do you think that the $600 threshold is going to create more or less resellers? Because obviously more people will have to report tax now, but a lot of people are underemployed or unemployed or fun employed, and now they're trying to get into the game. So I wanted to hear your opinion on whether or not you think there'll be less or more resellers in the future.
There'll be more. I mean, I've seen some comments coming through. They're like, "Well, I guess I'm done. No more Etsy or eBay for me." And I'm like, I mean, if you're all my clients, a lot of them weren't making 20,000,
Yeah.
and they were still paying taxes. And it's, I mean, at the end of the day, you still have more money in your pocket, but yeah, the government takes a decent chunk of it. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
So the third question and fourth question are kind of related to Michelle's question in the chat, which are, what records should I keep as a reseller? And then number two, what should I prepare for an accountant or CPA? And what could I give them that they could even help me to begin with?
Yeah. So for your records, I mean, there's lots. I mean, you want to have some type of bookkeeping system, and there's a lot of different types of bookkeeping systems you could use. It just depends on your comfort level. You could use anything from like a pen and paper logbook record of your transactions, to a spreadsheet, to a simple bookkeeping program like GoDaddy Bookkeeping, to a more robust bookkeeping program like QuickBooks Online. I mean, there's so many options that I would start simple. And then if you ever get to the point where like, this is a little bit tedious, then maybe move to something more automated. But at the end of the day, you just want to be able to have a record, basically like an annual summary of your income and expenses. What were your total sales? What was your cost of goods sold? What was your total supplies expense? All that stuff. And that's what you want to give. If you're having somebody else prepare your taxes for you, that's what you want to be able to hand over to them. Yeah, because that's a question I get all the time. They're like, do you need my detailed inventory spreadsheet? Do you need my receipts? And I'm like, no, I don't need any of that stuff. I just need the annual summary totals, basically.
Okay. So it's pretty straightforward. And I think that people need to, from a very high level, it is total revenue minus total expenses equals what you owe taxes on. And I think if you start with that as your thought, I think it's less overwhelming. A lot of people are overwhelmed by this.
Yeah, typically when I have a phone call with somebody who's fairly stressed out, it doesn't take long just to kind of go through that before they say, "Oh, it doesn't sound as complicated as I was making it." So yeah, it's usually not as complicated as people think. Not as much reason to stress.
Next question is going to be, how do I record a purchase at a garage sale or flea market if I used cash to pay? There's a lot of variations of this, but essentially, how do I record a cash transaction?
Yeah, I think this is one I want to make a video on too, but the government's not going to like penalize you for not having something that never existed. I don't think they expect people to have really solid substantiation for their garage sale or flea market purchases. So in that case, you just have to make your own record. You can write it down in your logbook. If you're really worried about it, you can take a picture, but you just want the basic details, like what the item is, how much it costs, where you got it, the date. And that's really all you need. But if you don't have that, I wouldn't sweat it.
From my CPA, essentially what I do is I withdraw money at the ATM, and then I use that receipt, and then I just label it flea market date, and then I take a picture of it and email it to myself, and that's all I have. But I think that there is no actual way to prove that you spent that money with the item, and you're not going to video record yourself doing it. So I've never seen anybody have an issue with that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think doing any more than that would be overkill. Yeah, like even if you do get audited, I doubt the IRS is going to drill down to that level of detail.
Yeah,
it's just not going to be an issue.
Should I pay estimated taxes quarterly?
Yeah, this one depends. So the IRS wants you to basically break up your tax and pay it quarterly. And it's not like doing your taxes. You're just submitting a payment. Like it's something that takes 2 or 3 minutes online. So then the question is, am I required to do that? And how much would that have to be? So the simple rule of thumb is if you're going to owe over $1,000 at the end of the year, the IRS wants you to break that up and pay that throughout the year. The exception to that is if you've already paid in 100% of the prior year tax liability, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Whether that be through W-2 withholdings or any extra payments that you've made. So if you have a W-2 job, or if you have a spouse with a W-2 job, it could be that the withholdings from their paycheck are enough to cover the taxes due from your reselling. It all just depends how much total income you have coming in.
So there's a lot of variations of this question as well, which is, should I start a sole proprietorship, an LLC, an S Corp? Do I need that to start if I've already started and didn't form yet? Well, how do you feel about company formation?
Yeah, I think especially if we're talking reselling, just start as a sole proprietorship, just because that's the simplest. There's really nothing you need to do to form a sole proprietorship. Once you start selling, that's what the IRS considers you to be by default. The main reason to form an LLC, or when you would want to do that, is when you think it's important to have liability protection. That's the main benefit. So if you have a lot of personal assets you want to protect, or if you're selling things that are kind of, I don't know, have a liability surrounding them, you might want an LLC. The other reason for an LLC is if you want to form an S Corp, because an S Corp is what can really yield some significant tax benefits, but that only makes sense at a certain level of income, or a certain level of profit. So, I mean, that's the typical progression that I see is you start off as a sole proprietorship, with which a lot of people stay as forever, which could be fine. But the next logical step is an LLC. And after that, if anything, they would do an S Corp.
Okay. How do I know if it's tax deductible or not?
Like any expense?
Any
Makes sense?
expense.
Yeah, I mean, most expenses that you incur as part of operating your business are going to be tax deductible, or at least partially tax deductible. I mean, most things are, but then there are a few exceptions, like meals are typically only 50% deductible if they qualify. That's different this year because they're 100% deductible this year because of some of the stimulus coronavirus legislation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the mileage, I think it's, oh gosh, I want to say it's 56 cents. I might be wrong for 2022. I'm probably wrong. But just things like that are just like partially deductible. But I mean, if you're talking like supplies or, software subscriptions, or, just everyday stuff that you're purchasing for your business, it's just going to be fully deductible.
Do you recommend a separate bank account or credit card?
Yeah, that's typically one of my first pieces of advice, just because it'll make it so much easier for you to be able to track your business profitability, and also just have that activity separate from your personal stuff. So you can, track your profitability and, for tax purposes. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. So last question, and this is just maybe only pertains to me, but I've been using the mileage deduction every single year. And I'm thinking about maybe getting a car and using the Section 179 rule. Now, could I do that and take the mileage deduction, or is it only the car if you decide to go that route?
Yeah, so you can do either. You can deduct either mileage or actual expenses. And actual expenses would be like the gas, maintenance, insurance, and it would include the actual cost of the car. So that's the depreciation piece.
I got you. Okay. So one or the other. That's fantastic. It ended up being unless you're going to buy an expensive car that you don't need, usually the mileage deduction is already pretty good from my experience.
Yep. And if you plan to put a lot of miles on, for sure.
Yep. Cool. So is there any other common questions that you have that you hear from other people asking tax questions? Because that's what I just asked you is like 95% of the questions I get.
Yeah. That's probably the same for me too. Receipts, estimated taxes,
Yep.
Yeah,
What record should I keep?
Bank account.
Bank account, $600 threshold. And, I always tell people that you're liable even if you make $1, and that is very unpopular. So maybe I should just not say that, but I think it's something that I think people should plan for, especially as e-commerce starts to grow. I think we're still in the beginning of e-commerce.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And that's one of my first videos that I made. Like, at what point do you have to pay taxes on your selling income? So if you don't want to actually say it, you could just send them that video.
Okay, perfect. So if people have any additional questions, how should they find you?
Either YouTube or Instagram now. So just at Not Your Dad CPA on Instagram, or not Your Dad CPA on YouTube.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mark, for your time.
Sure thing.
All right, guys, I know taxes and bookkeeping can be a little bit overwhelming, but don't worry. When you're just getting started, you need to figure out the basics. That's why in my 100 listing challenge, I recommend going over every single fee for the first 100 items to figure out how every single fee and expense works on eBay. But after that, you can switch to just doing it by category. For me, accounting and taxes just takes about an hour per month. So it's only taking about 10 hours a year for me to figure out all my different expenses. So don't worry, once you get the hang of it, it's actually really quick. Appreciate you guys. See you next time. Make progress daily.